welcome to the Law and Crime Network, everybody. I'm Michael Bryant. So, hey, you got a ticket to one of the biggest movies in town. I mean, it's been anticipated for quite some time. You get to the theater, you're told you can't really go in the theater and watch. We'll have the audio. It might trickle down the hallway. You'll catch some of it. But the last 6 minutes, come on in and watch the movie. That's kind of where we are in Ada County, Boise, Idaho, because today we are awaiting a verdict in the case against Lori Vallow Daybell. As you know, the court has prohibited live streaming of the trial itself, getting the audio on a delayed basis, but today we will have the verdict for you live. Of course, Lori Vallow Daybell is accused of killing her son, J.J., accused of killing her daughter, Tylee, accused of killing Chad's former wife, Tammy. Jury went at it yesterday, kind of laid the foundation, I think, for what they had to deal with ultimately. 4 hours, a little shy of that, is all they deliberated into the early evening. And so we're going to see where they go today. I think they've been at it a little less than an hour today. So what this means, we can speculate, and I guarantee you we will. We know that she's also charged in a number of cases outside of the current jurisdiction. So there's a lot more a lot more Lori Vallow Daybell to come as this case unfolds today and then moves on into these other jurisdictions. So when that verdict comes in, of course, we're going to stream it to you live online. For now, though, let's get a live update from our eyes, ears, and other senses that have been inside that Ada County Courthouse. Joining me is, there she is, look at that. GiGi McKelvey is here. Hey, GiGi, this is kind of that most exciting part of the trial, perhaps. You know, once it gets going, you've been there 5 weeks, and now, you know, it's a hurry up and wait. What's the feeling there around the courthouse?
Hurry up and wait is the feeling for sure. I get very nervous during deliberations. I pace a lot, but I can't do that in the courtroom. So I'm stuck sitting there and reading what everybody's saying online has been interesting. All the comments in the YouTube comments here. And yeah, so it's just a kind of a light atmosphere up there. Larry Woodcock playing one of JJ's favorite songs. There's a video actually of JJ and Larry on a bus where JJ has the microphone. Larry comes in, who is JJ's grandfather, and starts singing a song called The Party's Over, and JJ gets so excited and giggles, and that was his favorite thing for his grandpa to sing. So he was playing that song up there, big smile on his face. He has his world's greatest papa shirt on. And he said he may not be the world's greatest papa, but he wants to be that to JJ and Tylee. So I think they're feeling a little relieved that the litigation is over and you know, apprehensive for the verdict. But I think everybody up there is feeling good that we'll get the right verdict at some point, hopefully today. Yeah,
those JJ images far better than those that have played out in this courtroom. That's for sure. So you kind of sense that people are thinking it's going to be a Friday verdict. What gives you that sense?
Well, you kind of see it on the jury's faces about the last week where they kind of have, you know, the first week everything was a shock, and it was very visual that it was a shock to them. You would see eyes get big. Now it's kind of like, well, let's just add that on to everything else we've heard. But you do see that they're ready. Some of these jurors have 4 and 5 notebooks they filled up during the course of these 5 weeks of testimony. So I think they know the case. I think they're ready. And yesterday was, like you say, a lot of formalities. I say the first hour was probably them just, can you believe what we just sat through for 5 weeks and how crazy this is? So I think maybe today now it's going to be down to business nonstop. So hopefully we'll get a verdict at some point today.
You know, one of the things interesting about any jury is that point at which, if they aren't told ahead of time, the alternates are identified, and there's probably, you know, a lot of deflated, you know, slumped shoulders because you're invested in this case. If you're an alternate and don't know it, you're still invested in this case. Did you sense any of that as the alternates were advised they weren't going to take part in the deliberations?
Sensed it and saw it. We could see the disappointment on a couple of the jurors' faces when they were told they were an alternate. They excused them to go home, which a lot of times they'll make you stay in the courthouse. They were told to not watch or you know, read anything about the case. They're still under their rule from the court. But yeah, I did see a couple who slumped shoulders and kind of exhaled, and I saw one Hail Mary done before they started pulling those numbers. So these people are invested, and they really did want to sit in and deliberate.
I do think that's the way to do it. I think if you identify the alternates up front, which a lot of jurisdictions do, they might be a little more checked out, thinking, hey, until somebody taps me on the shoulder, I'm just kind of along for the ride. But I like the way they do this, and I understand the disappointment from those who've invested so much time. So who else you see it around the courthouse? Do we have any of the adjacent, I'll call them, attorneys, those not involved in this case, but maybe others relating to the parties in this case? Who's hanging out?
The defense is here. They're seated at their table. They're investigators here. I've seen maybe one member of the prosecution, but they're not in the courtroom right now. So it could be maybe they're just choosing to wait until we hear a verdict announcement and not sit here and wait in the courtroom. It's about half full. It's not as bad as I thought it would be, but I think the minute that they announce there's a verdict, it's going to be a rush to get up there.
Yeah, and I understand there's going to be a 1 hour get ready kind of thing. That'll usually slop over into an hour 20 hour. You know how these things come together a little more slowly than anticipated. Let me ask you this. Here's an unfair question, my favorite kind. You've been there the whole time from day one. What if I asked you, boom, what's the most exciting, unexpected moment? What would it be?
Oh, man. I don't know if it would be exciting, but I've followed this case for 3.5 years. I've spent hours and hours researching. I have thousands of pages that I've typed. I think learning those little missing details has been very enlightening. Nothing major that we didn't know, but, it does just drive home the fact that there was a lot of bad things going on behind the scenes with all of these guys. I think sometimes, too, certain witnesses backtracking how much they actually believed in this stuff or how involved they were was interesting. Of course, it can't be easy 3.5 years later to publicly say that you believed this man might have been the brother of Jesus, but we've seen a little bit of that on the stand too. So it's been surprising that people, just haven't owned up to their role in this little band of misfits.
So let's get past, the shock and awe of some of that stuff, because it is unbelievable that people would believe some of the things we heard in the testimony, act on those beliefs. But what about the concept legally that, we're trying to get Lori Vallow to a murder conviction? The prosecution is, of course, but they also have conspiracy to play with. Do you see the jury kind of hanging up on that and saying, well, we think maybe she was involved, but we can't get her for the murder directly?
That's what we've been discussing, and I do think that they'll get her on the murder charges. We all agree that if there's one charge that might hang them up, it could be Tammy Daybell, just because there wasn't really that one smoking gun text. With JJ, you have the duct tape. You have her texting about Tylee being Hillary and checking percentages for death. But with Tammy, we lost 90 communications between the whole group on the day of the attempt, and then also there were many the night she was murdered, and so those were kind of lost in the ethers. So I think that might have been where the smoking gun was as far as the conspiracy, because the last call Chad made into the morning that Tammy Daybell was murdered was at 12:55 a.m. And what's interesting about that is the coroner thought that Tammy had been dead for several hours just due to her body temperature and how stiff she was. So we've all been speculating, was that 12:55 text maybe some kind of a signal that everything was done? But we'll never know. So I think that could be the one charge, though, that this jury gets hung up on, because we sort of have analyzed the evidence that they put forth, and it's part of the conspiracy, and you kind of think if she did it with Charles and the kids, why wouldn't she with Tylee? So, but then you think about the fact that she's shopping for malachite rings and wedding dresses before Tammy Daybell's murdered, tells Lori she's going to be marrying Chad sooner than later. So I think common sense might come in, and maybe they won't get hung up on anything. Yeah,
and it does also leave a lot of room for negotiation, and if there's some compromise that needs to be done, that might be a place at which the jury says, okay, we'll take the first two, and we'll let Tammy slide at this moment. Who knows? We don't know what's going on there. Tell us, some of the housekeeping involved here. Have you seen the verdict form? How many pages? What's involved in that? Gives us a sense of how much bookkeeping they've got to do.
It was pretty thick, I will tell you that. We did not get a copy of it. Some of it was read out. It was just, they read it to the jury yesterday. It just goes through all the charges. I would say there's probably 20 plus pages. It was thick. So yeah, they have a lot to pour through, and they're going to have to really look at these charges and make sure that they're following the law in their verdict. So, it could be a later verdict this afternoon.
Yeah, I mean,
this jury's been
Friday.
Very attentive. Yeah.
I mean,
it's Friday, and then you got Mother's Day.
That's true.
Right.
That's
and
true.
Mother's Day is Sunday. So, we all think it would be perfect for a conviction today leading up to Mother's Day. But, you give a jury a case near a weekend, especially with a holiday coming up, sometimes they'll crank that verdict out if they're all pretty close.
Yeah, that's what I think happened yesterday, perhaps. In that first 4 hours, they found out where they don't agree, and then today it's time to hash that out. There seem to be some natural points at which verdicts are likely. Friday is one of them. Sometimes they come up with a soft verdict in the afternoon and say, maybe we can get one more meal. Let's have one more dinner, one more lunch, and then we'll be sure of where we are. So any of those things could happen
Right.
today, GiGi. Are you being well fed? Are you okay there?
I'm all good to go. I'm going to head back up to the courtroom and see what the buzz is. Every time anybody comes in through that one door, we all stop and watch, and we're starting to become professional lip readers at this point, trying to get any insight into what's happening.
Great. Well, I appreciate you there. We know it's covered. We've got 5 hours, 10 minutes on the clock now in terms of the deliberations, so head back in there. Keep us posted. Obviously, we'll be back with you to check in again probably next hour, I believe. So thank you, GiGi.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so let's take a break here. We're gonna tear this thing up. Remember, we have all the closing arguments from yesterday. The audio delay has now been facilitated. We'll have that for you when we come back. The prosecution's closing argument.